Hoi! The week is young and we have a new Forge Mutation, this time Ice, and I want to show you my loadout that I'm running for this week, in case you're wondering how to best set up for high-level mutations, for not necessarily speed runs, but at least runs that can get you score. So as you can see here, I'm actually running two sets that have very limited overlap, but you don't have to do that. That's just a little fun bonus because I wanted to try something out that I'll show you a little bit later. But first, let's look at the weapons and the skill trees for that. So we're going to use Hunting Blade, which you can get from Forge itself, very, very easy to get. And we're going to use a Spear with Human Bane and Enfeebling Skewer. This one is crafted. Now I see a lot of people running Roughhouser along with Hunting Blade because you get both from the dungeons. It's easy and cheap, but the downside here is that they're running Greatsword Hatchet then. And this may be something that you can use on the last boss, but I think for the dungeon in general, it's not the most effective way to go. We'll talk about that more later. First, the skill trees. So we're going to start with the Greatsword. That's your main DPS weapon, unless you have a very specific spec with a Spear, but then you probably also want a 3-perker. And we want to have a few points here that are just basically locked in that you're not really going to change. This is pretty much all, well, at least close to mandatory, and we want to have a Skyward Slash as well. And then we have a few points here that are also, you can switch these two, but like these are pretty much always the same. And you want to have Roaring Roger for mob clumps to pull them together. And this leaves us with 4 points that are more flexible. Now, one option is to go for anti-heal with Skyward Slash, but you need to invest 2 points, and one thing that I think a lot of people don't notice with Skyward Slash in particular is that Sickening Slash doesn't apply to the AoE slam, it only applies to the initial slash. So if you use it on a large mob group and they're not perfectly clumped, you're still only going to hit 1 or 2 mobs, and you're not going to get much overall anti-heal. So I personally prefer just having everyone that is melee jump the healer immediately, and make sure that that healer mob is down before anything happens, and then anti-heal is less necessary, or have a Hatchet user somewhere else in the group for that purpose that uses Infected Throw. A lot of Hatchet users are not doing that, but they really should be, because that's an AoE anti-heal that actually does what people think Skyward Slash does. So I prefer to just go into Relentless Refresh. Not a super important perk, honestly, but I think the 0.5 seconds route is just not worth it comparatively. So yeah, I think often you're not going to use Relentless Rush that often for this to be necessary. But on Ice it's nice because you'll see later that I have Relentless Freedom. So having it up more to get out of the ice crystals that we have this week is quite nice. And then I get Crushed the week because we need to get another perk, and this is a little bit of crit chance against mob clumps. And this allows us to unlock Unrelenting Onslaught. Alternatively, you could say we skip both of these and we just go like this. I don't prefer this way, I prefer this way, but both are possible, and that leaves us with exactly 1 point. In this point, you can put into Arrow Deflection. Why Arrow Deflection? Because the last boss in Forge, when he spins, he launches projectiles, and these projectiles can actually be blocked by Arrow Deflection. You can also dodge them, but sometimes it's more efficient in terms of stamina to do this, especially if he spins on you afterwards, you can still do the dodge then. So yeah, I think this is pretty useful to have, though not necessary either. You can get away with other perks if you want to, but this is the loadout that I like to run. On Spear, things are a bit more spicy, because you'll see this and be like, wait, this doesn't make sense, there are 4 abilities here. So, right tree, pretty standard stuff, light attacks to reduce cooldowns, so if you do 2 light attacks, this is especially effective on Ifrit, where you can, while she's doing a flamethrower phase, hit her twice and then move away, and you can reset the cooldowns that way. You have your Skewer, and obviously with Enfeebling Skewer on the weapon for reduction. And you have Perforate, ideally with Fortifying Perforate, but not strictly necessary, depending on how exactly you're playing this build. The really notable outlier here are these skills. There's a few points that you can also switch, like this, for example, isn't that important, depending on whatever, but these points here. So I don't like Coup de Grace, that's the first thing. I prefer to just use light attacks to reduce cooldowns after using Sweep on mobs, or just go straight into Perforate from it, depending on if I need to reset cooldowns, if I'm going to switch to my Greatsword after. So I don't need that point. And I like having Javelin. That's because I have Sundering Javelin on my helm, and that allows me to switch to Javelin on bosses, thanks to XR for giving me this idea. So I can just say, okay, before the boss, when I swap my gear set, I'm just going to swap this real quick as well. And now I have Javelin, I don't need to respec for it, and now I can apply that early rend. It's only above 50% now, but still, it's an extra rend that you can use. And it's also a nice ranged attack to have on the final boss in those situations where you cannot get close. The important thing is to actually remember to swap before the bosses, which is what I pretty much always forget. But if I don't forget, it is effective. By the way, if I were to run Hatchet, this would probably be my build. Just full white tree with these perks. If you want to run Berserk, that's fine. Just throw in Raining Throw and Infected Throw and leave out Social Distancing, which can be a bit more annoying to use anyways. Not that necessary, just to have an extra throw really. I would recommend for Forge in particular to keep Infected Throw and Raining Throw because both provide great utility here. Unless you're really burning the Cleric super quickly and feel like you're not really getting any use out of this. But even then, I feel like having more different throwing abilities on the last boss is still very effective. I don't like going down to Defy Death anymore because it really caps the damage of the Hatchet compared to other melee options, so I wouldn't suggest it. If you want to do it, it's up to you. Again, you can still get these two and just go ham on the left side otherwise, I suppose. And now let's look at my armor and my jewelry in the whole set. So what you can see here is that I have two different sets. This is the standard one. If you look here, I have 304 strength and 200 dex. That's because this set has 5 pieces with strength. And we're keeping one of these pieces in the other set, but only one. This is the one that stays the same. But the rest is all dex. And this is a bit of an experiment. This is something I wanted to try. So now I switch over to 300 dex. The reason I want to do this is so that I have the bonus damage on the Greatsword with the heavy attacks from 300 strength, which is the new passive on 300 strength. And on the bosses, I have more damage from the spear because it's single target, and therefore dex is more effective since the spear scales better with dex. Now, the problem with that is it takes a little bit of damage away from the Greatsword, and honestly, with a true perk of Spear, it was probably not the smartest decision to make, because it's kind of taken away from damage. I would just be better off using the Greatsword more even on bosses. The downside of using the Greatsword on bosses, and why I like to do this, is because you take extra damage while on the Greatsword. You deal extra damage, but you also take extra damage, and at the risk you're not taking with the Spear, which can get up to similar DPS values. Downside being that Hunting Blade is extremely good. It's basically a best-in-slot weapon, which makes it hard for secondary weapons to compete in terms of DPS. But anyways, I wanted to try it. If you're only going for one build and you're not doing this double thing, then I would say just go with a 300 strength route, focus on the Greatsword, or just do a 250-250 split if you prefer having a little bit more damage on the Spear as well, or whichever other secondary weapon you're using. Other good secondary options are obviously, especially Hammer for bosses, for the debuffing there, but also for mob groups, or a Great Axe for mob control. That's something you don't really need on the bosses, so if you're using a Great Axe, you can, for example, switch to Hatchet on bosses, or switch to a Spear as well. But I think it's very important to have at least one Spear in the group to consistently apply Enfeebling Skewer, and ideally the weakened from Perforate as well. So in terms of gear, I've crafted a lot of stuff this time. Normally I just rely on the drops, but this expedition doesn't really have good light gear for the most part. Only a few exceptions exist. So I figured I'm just going to craft and buy some pieces. So this is one I crafted with Sundering Javelin. That's just a little bonus. You absolutely don't need that. Again, I forget to switch half the time anyways, but it's nice to have. We have Flame Conditioning on a few pieces. So I have Flame Conditioning on the chest, on the gloves, and on the legs here. And now you may be thinking, why do I have Flame Conditioning on the ice set? The reason is that in the boss fights, I have enough fire resist. This is not a problem. I don't need Flame Conditioning here because I have all this flame jewelry. But in the ice part, you still have the fire ghost to deal with. So I feel like in those situations, it's actually more effective to have some Flame Conditioning, which is why I have some of that on my armor still. Kind of repurposed the set from last week for it, and that works pretty well, or from last mutation. And then on my boots, I have Relentless Freedom. Absolutely the most useful perk when it comes to ice mutations, because you can just get out. Ideally, you want to have an amulet with Purifying Toast. I don't have that, so I got to do with a budget version, I guess. Not really many weapon armor perks on this overall. Greatsword doesn't really need many, and the ones for Spear are more relevant for the bosses as well. Plus, the most important one is just Enfeebling Skewer on the weapon anyways. For the amulet, I just have a Ice Ward, Frozen Protection, Health Amulet. This is what I have for every single type of damage, usually with Dex, so I don't have to respec or switch attributes. Works very well. And then I have Legate's Ring here. That's the only one I'm not switching out, because I like the perks on that, and I don't feel like I need more fire resist here, so this is okay. And then for the earring, I have a Beloved and Refreshing Toast earring. This one happens to have Refreshing Evasion as well, but that's just a bonus. That's not what I got it for. And on the bottom set, this is the same. The chest here has Fortifying Perforate. Also happen to roll with Sturdy Energy. Not really that useful here, but hey, we have it. Fortifying Perforate was the purpose of this. Then we have the gloves here. So those are just bought. And you have the medium legwear here with shirking energy. I also bought those. And the boots with refreshing and human ward. I think I've also bought those. So it's not much crafted here really. Just cheap pieces. Because I really just needed human ward and full decks. You can see, again, medium legs and feet. So I can wear 3 light pieces otherwise. I think this is usually cheaper and more effective. And then along with that, we have the counterpart to the ice version. This time the amulet is full flame protection. Same ring. And we have an earring with evasive this time. Evasive or beloved, kind of same thing. You want to have one of them if you're dealing a lot of damage. Which one doesn't matter much. This one has refreshing toast and happens to have nimble as well, which is not why I'm getting it for, but nice to have anyways. So this is just bonus stuff. In both cases, I am now running fire absorption potion. I used to run human ward potions. I could technically make a third set and kind of switch around. But the reason I want fire absorption potions for both now is because it's effectively almost always the fire sections of the expedition that are the most dangerous. Because it's either the ice section where the fire ghosts are active and you take a lot of damage from those, or it's the bosses where you obviously need the fire pots anyways. So yeah, fire absorption all the way. I could put human ward in here as well if I wanted to. That would just be a bonus. And for one of the bosses, for the second named mob, not a boss, sorry, named mob, I think it's Sir Eld, I get out the lightning amulet. It's nice this week because it's ice. I don't really need to gear as much against the mages that are around him. So I can just go with my normal ice set here and just slot in. So basically what it looks like, I wear this set and then just slot in this one. Found this on the training post. You don't need the refreshing on it. It was pretty cheap, but because no one is really using lightning protection for anything, lightning protection, health, and you're good to go. And that makes that boss a lot easier because between that, Enfeebling Skewer, and Weaken from Perforate, you can survive the shock slam that he does, and you don't have to worry so much about stamina and everything. So it's a lot easier. Alternatively, you could also get a lightning absorption potion, I think. That would also be a way to avoid the damage that you're getting. As usual, you want to have a good all-rounder group with enough weakens and rents, but especially on the bosses, the spear will take care of a lot of that. I would strongly recommend for the last boss to have most players stick to melee for the most part, unless it's absolutely necessary that they go ranged, or for everyone to go ranged. If you do it all melee, it's more risky, but it also is a lot quicker. But if you do it half melee or like 1 melee and 2 ranged, then what ends up happening is basically the DPS goes down significantly. The risk for the melee DPS is significantly higher because it takes way longer to kill the boss, which puts you into a lot more risky situations. And then if the melee DPS dies, then it goes even slower. Whereas if all 3 are ranged, you will have less risk of dying, but the boss fight will also take much, much longer, especially if you're using hatchets. If you're going full decks, bowls or something, it may look a little different. But overall, yeah, I think it's still one of those awkward situations where I would prefer to have all melee, but it's often not the case, especially because people are getting the hatchet from the dungeon and are then running with it. You can definitely run a bow with this loadout as well if you're going the 300 dex version, and then you can just switch to a bow on the boss if that is what you prefer. Keep in mind that it is very helpful for your team anyways if at least someone is applying consistent spear weakens, because that means if the boss spins on you, he just deals a whole lot less damage. So that's my loadout for this week. Like I said, ideally I want to have Purifying Toast on the ones for ice especially here, so the non-boss ones. Obviously, there's not a lot of best in slot here or anything going on, it's just 2 perkers and that's completely fine. You can absolutely reach gold or score whatever you want to reach with that. And yeah, I hope this helps you out if you're wondering what you should run. Again, not everyone should be running Spear. Somebody should be running Hammer or Great Axe so that you have a good mix. One of them can be put on the tank. If the tank is lucky, the tank can run Greatsword as well. So lots of things going on that you can switch around. And speaking of tanks running Greatsword, I will make a guide on that soon. So if you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Also, if you're interested in trading tips, you can support me on Patreon, like these guys who already do exactly that. So thank you for your continued support, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.